Good morning. It is Thursday, April 23rd. We are going to build on the previous lesson. We are going to graph sinusoidal functions with different amplitudes and midlines using amp, sine, freq, x, shift, and knowing the four different waves. So let's start with our song. To help you remember amp, sine, freq, x, shift. And let's get a nice big view of me. I still don't have my pick. My son put it somewhere. Amp, sine, freq, x, shift. 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 So, amp, sine, freq, x, shift. That is the key to graphing sinusoidal functions. I think my wife just locked the door because my son heard the guitar and he wants to come down now. So, let's get back to the presentation here. So we're going to graph sinusoidal functions with different amplitudes and midlines using amp, sine, freq, x, shift, and knowing the four different waves. So let's again talk about the four different waves that we talked about last class. You need to know these four waves. For now, just refer to them. Sine, both positive and negative sine, both start at the midline. Positive sign goes up first, negative sign goes down first. So again, both signs begin at the midline. Cosines do not begin at the midline. Positive cosine starts at the max. Negative cosine starts at the min. And remember, all the points are either at the midline, the max, or the min. So you need to know these four curves. We're going to be referring back to those. You need to know your definitions. You need to know that amplitude is the distance from the midline to the max or min. Frequency is how many waves from 0 to 2 pi. Period is the wavelength. It's how long it takes to make one full cycle. And skipping ahead, to find the period is 2 pi over the frequency. And your shift is your midline, the average value of the function. To graph, we need to use amp, sine, freq, x, shift to determine the amp, sine or cosine, positive or negative, the frequency, and the shift, which is the same thing as the midline. And once I have the frequency, I'm going to use the frequency to find the period. I draw in the midline and make dashes for the max and the min on the y-axis using the amplitude. I make 4 dashes on the x-axis, and the period goes at the end of the fourth. Once I do all that, I just look at my 4 waves, and I sketch in the appropriate one. So last lesson, there were no shifts. The shifts were all 0. In this lesson, we're going to have shifts. Everything else is going to be the same. And for all of these examples, the frequency is going to be 1, the period is going to be 2 pi. And I'll show you why, but next lesson, we're going to start messing with the frequencies. So whenever I see a trig graph, amp, sine, freq, x, shift, so the amp is what's in front of the sine or cosine. My amp is 1. Is this sine or cosine positive or negative? It's positive sine. My freq is between the sine and the x. It's 1. For this lesson, it's going to always be 1. Next lesson, it will not. It will never be 1. Then my freq, whoops, kind of got a little carried away there. My positive sine. My freq is 1. And then my shift is what comes after the x is -3. My period I need, it's 2 pi over the frequency, which is 2 pi over 1, which is 2 pi. And in this lesson, the period will always be 2 pi, but next lesson it will not be. So now that I got all my information, I'm going to draw in the midline and make dashes for the max and min. So my midline, my shift is -3. So at -3, I'm going to draw my dashed line. And now my amplitude is 1. That doesn't mean it's going to be at +1 and -1. Amplitude is the distance from the midline to the max, from the midline to the min. So if the amplitude is 1 from the midline, I'm going up 1 and down 1. Again, I'm not going up 1 and down 1 from the x-axis. I'm going up 1 and down 1 from the midline. That's my y-axis. Now my x-axis, I make 4 dashes and put the period at the end of the 4th dash. So I like to skip boxes. 1, 2, 3, 4. The period goes at the end, 2 pi. Now I'm going to draw in the appropriate curve. It's a positive sign. So positive sign is right here. It starts at the midline, then goes up. So I'm going to start at the midline. Then it's going to go up from the midline. Then it's going to go down, back to the middle from the midline. Then it's going to go to the min from the midline. And then it's going to go back to the midline. I sketch my curve, and that's it. Again, the amplitude is the distance from the midline. So if the amplitude is 1, I'm going up 1 from the midline. I'm not going to +1. No, that's wrong. I'm going up 1 from the midline, which is here. And again, the midline is the shift. That's it. There's really not much new for this lesson. Most of you are going to just kind of breeze right through it. If you did well with the previous lesson, I'm going to go through a few more examples, and then you're going to have an opportunity to practice. And that's it. Each lesson, we're going to kind of build on it. Normally, I would do a lesson a day, but based on the circumstances, we're going to slow it down. We're going to do 2 days per lesson. Let's try number 2. Amp, sine, freq, x, shift. Amp, sine, freq, x, shift. So the reason I write it like this, I'm kind of lining everything up. The amplitude, then it's sine or cosine, then it's the frequency, then it's x, then it's the shift. So I'm kind of lining everything up there to see exactly what's going on. So the amp is what's in front of the sine or cosine. The amp is 2. Sine or cosine, positive or negative. This is a positive cosine. The frequency is between the cosine and the x. In this case, it's 1. My shift is what comes at the end. My shift is 1. Then I need to find the period, because the period goes to the end of the 4th dash. The formula for period is 2 pi over the frequency. The frequency is 1. So my period is 2 pi. So now on my y-axis, I sketch in my midline. Again, shift is the midline. There's my midline. Now my amp is 2. So again, I know I keep on saying it, the amplitude is the distance from the midline to the max, the midline to the min. So if the amplitude is 2 from the midline, I'm going up 2 and down 2. So that's up 2 to +3, down 2 to -1. Again, the amplitude is the distance from the midline to the max, from the midline to the min. So I'm counting the amplitude both up and down from the midline, not from the x-axis, from the midline. My y-axis is good. Now my x-axis, I make 4 dashes. 1, 2, 3, 4. And what goes at the end of the 4th dash? The period, which is 2 pi. Now that I did all that, now it's time to do the sketch. It's a positive cosine. So I'm going to go back here. Positive cosine starts at the max. So it starts at the max. Then it goes to the midline. Then it goes to the min. Then it goes to the midline. Then it goes to the max. And there it is. Again, I'm using amp sine freq x shift to get all of the important information that I need. I'm doing my midline, which is your shift. The amplitude is how much I count up and down from the midline. 4 dashes on my x-axis. The period goes at the end of the 4th dash. Again, for this lesson, the period will always be 2 pi. The next lesson that we do on Monday, it will not be 2 pi, it will be other values. And once I have that, since it's positive cosine, I look back here. Yes, this is something you're going to have memorized. If you ever have a quiz or something on that you can't cheat on. Positive cosine goes top, middle, bottom, middle, top. So I just plot those points. Top, middle, bottom, middle, top. That's it. So we're going to go through 2 more examples, and then you're going to practice. Number 3. Amp sine freq x shift. I'm going to give you a moment right now. I want you to tell me the amp. I want you to tell me if it's sine or cosine. I want you to tell me the frequency. I want you to tell me the shift. And then I want you to find the period. I'm going to give you about a minute to a minute and a half to do that while I stare at you and creep you out. Again, you are filling in the amp, sine or cosine, positive or negative, the frequency, the shift, the period. Okay. My amp is what's in front of sine or cosine. It's not negative. Amp is always a distance. It's 3. Sine or cosine, positive or negative. Well, that's where the negative comes into play. It's a negative sine. Frequency is what's between the sine and the x. That's 1. Shift comes after the x. That's 2. Period is 2 pi over the frequency. It's 2 pi over 1, which is 2 pi. So I start with my midline. My shift is 2. So at 2, I'm going to draw in a dashed midline. And since the amplitude is 3, from the midline, I'm going up 3 to 5. And I'm going down 3 to negative 1. Again, amplitude, I'm not putting my max and min at positive 3 and negative 3. I'm putting my max and my min 3 units from the midline. Up 3 from the midline, down 3 from the midline. My y-axis is good. My x-axis, 4 dashes, 1, 2, 3, 4. My period goes at the end of the 4th dash. Now it's time to draw my wave. If you don't know what your waves look like, you're in trouble, unless you look at this right here. Again, this is in the front of your packet. You should have it written down somewhere so you can easily refer to it. Negative sine starts at the middle, then goes down. So I'm going to start at the midline, then it goes down, then it goes midline, then it goes up, then it goes midline. I draw the sketch, and that's it. I'll go over a negative cosine, just since we've done 3 of them so far. I might as well do the 4th wave. And after that, it's on you to practice. Again, this really is pretty straightforward as long as you know all the little components. There are a lot of little components here. So that's why, of course, why we're practicing. But once you practice it, you get all these little components down. It's really pretty good. All right, so 4 amp sine freak X shift. Just like the last question, I want you, well, you know what? I want you to do it on your own. Tell me the amp, sine or cosine, positive or negative. Amp sine, I want the freak. I want the shift. I want the period. Again, obviously, I want you using the graph, but you don't need graph paper for this. Compared to other graphing, you can get away just doing this freehand, but I prefer using the graph if you have access to the graph. Try it on your own. I'm going to give you about 2 to 3 minutes. I'm going to literally sit here and stare and drink some water. Take about 2 to 3 minutes and give this one a try on your own. My amp is what's in front of sine or cosine. My amp is 2. Sine or cosine, positive or negative. I see a negative cosine. Freak is between sine or cosine and x. Freak is 1. Again, every example in this lesson, the freak is going to be 1. My shift is negative 3. Shift comes after the x. My period is 2 pi over the frequency, which is 2 pi over 1, which is 2 pi. So I start with my shift. My midline is negative 3. So I'm going to draw my midline in. My amplitude is how high and low from the midline. So if my amplitude is 2, from the midline, I'm going up 2, and I'm going down 2. That's negative 1. That's negative 5. My x-axis, I make 1, 2, 3, 4 dashes. My period goes at the end of the 4th dash. Now I'm going to see what my negative cosine wave looks like if you don't have it memorized already. Negative cosine starts at the bottom, then middle, top, middle, bottom. Bottom, middle, top, middle, bottom. Bottom, middle, top, middle, bottom. And again, every point is going either at the top, the middle, or the bottom. And I got those. My shift is my middle, and my amplitude is how high and low I'm getting to get my top and my bottom. I draw in the wave. That's a little bit better. And that's it. So your classwork / homework is to finish graphing sinusoidal functions with vertical shift. You're gonna have a quiz. It's gonna be due, I mean, tomorrow's Friday, but on the weekend, it's gonna be due Sunday night. I'm not gonna take a look at it until Monday morning. Now, as most of you know, I'm working on finding a way for you to do the graph electronically. I've been working on it. I'm hoping to have a solution. I don't have a solution yet. So worst comes to worst, you can just do it on paper and do a rough sketch. You can do it freehand. I'm okay with that, but I'm trying to get it so you can just kind of do it right on there and submit that. I don't know how to do that as of now. I worked on it for a while yesterday. I haven't gotten a solution yet. I'm going to work on it again today. So you'll see on the assignment, if there's a Google Doc or whatever attached, then you can use that. If you want to do it freehand, great. If you have a printer and you want to print graph paper or the assignment, great, and take a picture of that. I'm just trying to give everybody options. But again, worst comes to worst, you can always just do it freehand on a separate sheet of paper. That's not a graph. And it should still accomplish the goal of showing me that you understand how to do it. All right. I miss you guys. Hopefully I'll get to see you at some point, but until then, we're going to keep on rocking this online thing. Some of you are doing really, really good with it, and some of you actually have told me that you feel more comfortable with it. So you can work at your own pace, and you don't have, some of those students next to you being disruptive and distracting. So let's keep on rolling with it. And that's it. Have a great day. And just again, to sum this lesson up, I can graph sinusoidal functions with different amplitudes and midlines using amp sine freq x shift and knowing the 4 different waves. Your procedure, use amp sine freq x shift to get the amplitude, sine or cosine, positive or negative, the frequency, and the shift/midline. Once you have the frequency, you can find the period by doing 2 pi over the frequency. Once you have that information, you go on your y-axis, you draw in your midline, you make your dashes for your max and your min. You're counting the amplitude up and down from the midline. Then for your x-axis, you always make 4 dashes. You put whatever the period is at the end of the 4th dash. Then you look at your curves, you draw the appropriate curve in. That's it. Have a great day.